Hello guys, this is Ankashin, and today we're going to be talking about the Italian opening because it is a very important opening that you should know if you're playing chess. So why is it so important? Because it is fairly popular among the people, and it also is fairly simple to understand, and and it makes you learn more. So the first move. So e4. It basically pushes the pawn forward, and it takes the center squares. Takes one of the 4 center squares, which I talked about in the earlier videos, that you should put your pawns or your pieces there to take up a lot of space. So as you can see right here, the pawn basically took away these 2 squares from black, and black needs to prepare in order to push the pawns or put the pieces there. So that would be really good for white, and one of them is also in the center, which I talked about. The center is very important. So and it also makes the bishop be able to move in this diagonal and the queen in this diagonal, so they can be free and go there. In the next move, black plays e5. So e5 is basically thinking the same thing as white when he played e4, because e5 also takes up some squares in the center, and it also frees up this diagonal for the bishop and this diagonal for the queen. Knight f3. This move attacks the pawn, and it also develops a minor piece, which is the knight. So it can this square is definitely better than staying at home at g1, and this plays because you can move to a lot of squares other than at g1, where you can move very low. And this also attacks the center, and it attacks this pawn, so now black has to defend it. So the next move, knight c6, which defends the pawn, and this also develops the minor piece, which is the knight, and it also attacks the center. Next move, bishop c4. This develops the minor piece, which is the bishop, and it also points towards f7, which is the only square that or pawn that only the king is protecting. Why is that so important? Is because you see all the other ones, all the other pawns are protected by some other piece other than the king. And why is the king a bad protector? Is because, for example, when you have 2 pieces attacking this pawn and you take it, the king cannot take it back because it's against the rules. So white is attacking this f7 square because it is pretty weak. And now, next move, black does the exact same thing. Black frees up his bishop so it can attack some squares, and especially the f2 square, because it is basically the f7 square for white. Next move, c3. White plays this move as a preparation move, and you don't always want to play a move that attacks something directly, because it most often do not work, because your enemy can just defend it easily. But this preparation moves can make your attack stronger and therefore harder to defend. This c3 plans to play d4 next move to attack the center, and as you can see, this attack will work, but without the c3 it will not work. So if you play d4, let's just pretend black doesn't move, right? So white plays d4, and as you can see in this exchange, at the end white will be up white will be up half a piece, like a minor piece for a pawn, which is 2 points, and it is pretty good. And also white gets the center after that, so black will probably not trade that much and just give white the center, because if they trade, then black will lose material. So this attack will work. And next move, knight f6. Black plays, black's basically develops this knight, and it also attacks the white e4 pawn. So now white has to defend it. In some scenarios, some people like to play d4 right now, which attacks the center, as I explained earlier, works. But then, like after some trading and moving black's pieces away, black can take this e4 pawn. So some people like to trade the center for like some pawns, or they can figure out the way to defend the e4 pawn. That will take a lot of effort. And in the Italian mainline, people like to play d3, so which defends the pawn that the knight is attacking, so that so the pawn doesn't get taken, and can also support the e4 pawn, which is in the center, because center pawns should be supported. Okay, next move, black castles. So castling just protects the king, as I explained earlier in earlier videos. And yeah, white also castles, which also protects the king. So black plays a6. As I explained earlier about the preparation moves, it prepares to play b5, which can attack the white bishop. And after it attacks, white bishop can only have one square to go, which is the b3 square. And so it's in a bit worse position because it's closer to the edge and it has like a bit less squares to go to, instead of this where it has a bit more squares. So that will make the bishop a bit less strong, but it's still a pretty strong bishop in the if over here, because it points right at the king. So next move, bishop b3. So white knows that black will attack, and that will be a tempo for black, because like after it attacks, white has to move his bishop away. So white does it ahead of time, so black doesn't do it, because if black does it, black gains more squares, right? So, and it will also cost white a tempo, so because white has to move his bishop back. So white moves his bishop back in advance, so the black doesn't do it, and he doesn't have to waste the tempo. So next move, black plays d6. Basically frees up this bishop, frees up this whole big diagonal that the bishop can move freely wherever he wants. And it also supports its e5 pawn and his c5 bishop. Knight bd2. So this move basically just makes like develops the knight, which is a minor piece, and you should develop knights in the opening, like the minor pieces, because here, although it's still pretty near the edge, it can move a lot of places. For example, this square is pretty good for the knight, because like it's very close to the center and therefore can attack it, and it can also support the e4 pawn and chain with the knight, so they protect each other. So bishop e6. So apparently this bishop is worse than this bishop right here in the b3, because this bishop doesn't really do anything, while white's b3 bishop can attack the king. So black feels a bit threatened and tried to trade off the good bishop with his own bad bishop. So next move, white declines the trade by playing knight c4. So he moves his knight to a better place, so it can is not close to the edge and it can see a lot of squares and attack the center. It also stops trading the bad bishop for the good bishop. So that is this is a multifunctional move, which is really great. And black plays h6 because black is sort of scared of white playing bishop g5 next move, because it pins the queen to the knight. And if the knight moves, so for example moves somewhere, the bishop can take the queen. And the bishop can always threaten to take the knight because it will, if the okay. So the bishop, if it's here, can also stop the queen from moving away, because if she does, then the bishop can take the knight and give a king open file so white can attack it. Okay, so black stops all of that by playing h6, and it also gives the king a little window to breathe in. So basically, if let's say all of these pieces are gone, right, and white moves the rook there somehow, and without the pawn being on h6, black's king will be checkmated, because like let's say this knight is not there to stop it, right? So the king will be blocked by its own pawns, be checkmated, because it has no room to move. But after you play h6, for example, the same situation happens and the king can escape here, and that stops it from being checkmated if background make happens. The next move, rook e1. It moves the rook onto a like a better file, because here it is blocked by its pawn and it cannot move anywhere, and here at least it can move some squares, and it can also support the e4 pawn, which is pretty good. And black does the exact same thing. It just moves his rook to a better place, and it also indirectly support this e5 pawn and also support his bishop, just in case if white does some like move his knight away and try to take the bishop. Although that probably wouldn't happen because this bishop is better than this bishop. So yeah, that is all about the Italian opening. And the game will continue after this, and it can play all sorts of stuff. White can attack black, black can attack white, whatever happens. But this is the Italian opening, which sort of gives white a bit of advantage because it's got some good pieces, but this bishop is not developed. So after these 10 moves, you should try to develop this bishop if you're playing white. If you're playing black, what's that? Yeah. There it is. If you're playing black, you should try to, like, maybe kick this knight away so you can trade your bishop for the good bishop, and maybe try to counterattack. So yeah, that is all about the Italian opening.